what worked as a calisthenics beginner doesn't work as you become more advanced. Why is that?
Why is that? Usually calisthenics or strength training, any strength field, as stress increases significantly, your training has to shift. Every training stage has a different, I would say, trait. So as a beginner has physical traits that he needs to develop in order to break into that next barrier, whatever you call it, intermediate, early intermediate, advanced, elite. But every stage has physical traits. For instance, beginners, they recover quickly, usually because the stress is low per session or per exercise. Everything, rows and push-ups are fairly easy to recover from because the stress is generally lower, but also their work capacity is low. So anyone who coached a beginner knows they're looking at the ceiling or out of the window in 20 minutes time. And just because of, I guess, logistical environment, usually you have fitness classes 8 to 9 a.m., 9 to 10 a.m., so it's a 1 hour slot. I don't really think it fits beginners. You need quicker workouts, shorter workouts. Actually, that's the type of workouts I used to do when I started, 10, 15 minutes, mostly push-ups, some pull-ups, and you build the habit, and you never get to the point where you're completely smashed, your work capacity is low, but to recover quickly, you can train tomorrow again. Probably the same muscle group, you can train quite hard, but short. Now, you build that work capacity in order to get into the intermediate stage. Okay, intermediates need to mostly build more volume of training. So, Daniel, let's use you probably as an enthusiast, a strength enthusiast, as an athlete yourself. That was probably the time where you probably devoted the most to your training in weekly hours. 2, 3, 4 hour sessions, probably 5, 6 days a week. Am I right? Handstands, mobility, strength. So that's where you do a lot of volume. Now, when you get to the most advanced, your advanced level, closer to your potential, where really strength progression is the rate of progress is really slower, then it's more about less volume, increasing the intensity. Okay, you don't have to do as much general work. You can probably hone in on the top qualities that you have, the top strength, the skill, which you can see me doing, some elite stuff do. They don't have to have all of that base of training that they developed prior. So it all depends on the type of physical quality that you need to develop and also accommodate to your level of fitness. And it's definitely different as you are advanced. You can tolerate a lot of work, but you also need to recover from hard sessions, and beginners can go very differently.
Well said, man, because a beginner, they can do 6 workouts a week, high frequency, they can still perform, they can progress, recover, but if you try and do that as you become more intermediate and advanced, you end up plateauing. And then the typical mindset we have throughout fitness, it's more is better. I have the time, I have the commitment, I want to push. But then you realize quickly that if you do that approach that you tried as a beginner with high volume, high frequency, and high intensity, as you do become more advanced, you have the ability to really fatigue yourself because you're pushing heavy weights if you're using barbells and dumbbells, or the calisthenics moves you're doing are higher intensity. You're using full front levers, straddle planches. These really cook you so much more. And this is something that I wish I knew when I first started, that this happens, because in the earlier days of calisthenics, there wasn't really much information on periodization, recovery, and what the advanced person needs. And I was applying that beginner mindset as I was going years and years into my training. And eventually you just realize, wow, I need an extra rest day. I don't need to do as many accessories. But it all depends on the goal and where you're at in your training as well.
Yes, exactly. And the information has already been out for 40 years because they done it in weightlifting over the course of 4 Olympic cycles. The Soviets did, where they tracked, because they had government funding, so they tracked their weightlifting team over the course of 4 Olympic cycles. And we have the research and the data, and actually I love talking about weightlifting, which is the sport of snatch and clean and jerk, because it has a lot of, I think, similarities to gymnastics, where it is very strength-based, but there's technique and speed qualities to it, the snatch and the clean and jerk. So for the most part, and you will be able to correlate the data. Okay, you'll be able to use the numbers quite similarly to gymnastics training. You'll have to obviously modify the exercises for whatever you do, push and pull and skill and planche and front level, which you can, but the research has been out. And for instance, you do see that the overall monthly volume that you should train increases from beginner to intermediate, and it reaches a certain peak in an athlete's career. And if from that stage that you were referring to, you keep pushing up as you are also training heavier, because Daniel, you are pushing serious pull-ups and dips weight. You keep pushing that volume up as well. That's where you start to break, and I think that is simply where a lot of people are stuck in calisthenics. That's where the injuries pop up, the soft tissue, right? The tendinopathy, the golfer's elbow, the shoulder impingement, okay? And you get attached to doing so much work, and you're not attached to progress. You're just attached to the emotion of doing a lot. And your profile, your personality is revolved around that. But you actually need to shift and acquire other tools.
That is such a true statement for those of us, myself included, who are obsessed, passionate, love calisthenics to a fault. We can be our own worst coach if we're trying to train for ourselves. And it is something that is often forced on us through slow progress, plateaus, injuries, or just burnout period. This is why a lot of people fall off. It's not because they're not trying hard enough in some cases. It's that they've tried so hard and they're not able to step back and be a bit more intelligent and smart with their programming to actually see progress. They become attached to the emotion of working hard. That is a great distinction that you made there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's especially for people that hear this and they want to gain to those advanced skills that I can do and yourself. A common problem is specializing too soon, just doing the skills, but you haven't built any foundation. You alluded to before that I've spent years and hours doing the basics, which is very true. I say that all the time. Can you just convince people, in a way, the importance of doing this and what it means for skills down the track?
Yes. Well, I think it's for people to decide what they want to do. As a general note, it's great that people are very involved in calisthenics and strength training. It's, for the most part, that's healthy, that's great activity, good for you. That's the very broad perspective, zoom out. Okay, we don't have to constantly argue online, but there are details to it. Okay, if we study any strength or power sport or power related sport, and that even includes sprinting, bounding, okay, there is no single athlete with their life or career on the line that trains specificity to the point that some calisthenics, and it's not just calisthenics, it used to be in powerlifting as well. They used to do SBD workouts, squat, bench, deadlift days, and you just do all 3 of them every day. Why? Because specificity is king. And I think people took it to the extreme. There is no one single strength or power athlete that trains just the competition lift, whether that's 100-meter sprint, 40-meter dash, broad jump, triple jump, snatch, clean and jerk, squat, bench and deadlift. Every top athlete with a top coach that has their life and career devoted to it and wants to win a medal include other exercises. Now, as we mentioned prior, depending on the level that you're at, you'll be working or spending more time on base training versus your competition lifts. And in calisthenics, just a small deviation, we have so many different skills that we can do. There are no distinct competition lifts, okay? There's a routine, but you can, for the most part, there are stuff that you have to do in a routine, in a gymnastics ring routine, like a handstand, and you have to do certain positions. But you can actually change, depending on your strengths and weaknesses, what you choose to perform. For the most part, it's the same in calisthenics. You can do different skills and develop in certain ways. But again, coming back, depending on the level that you are at, you'll devote more time either to general training or specific training. When you're a beginner, you'll devote more to general training. That's the base. The wider the base, the higher the peak will ultimately be. And as you become more advanced, yes, you can hone in on fewer exercises, or so-called your competition lifts. But I have to tell you as well, when you've been doing this long enough, you told me to convince them, you get to the point where you simply enjoy training, the beauty of strength training. You want to do other stuff. You want to incorporate lower body. You want to jump, you want to sprint. You want to be able to do other stuff. So it's fine if you are now highly specific. I've been there to a certain extent. Essentially, you want to enjoy multiple domains of training, or even just strength training, by incorporating weighted calisthenics or barbell and dumbbells, and lower body and upper body, and gymnastic skills and strength and static, and all of this stuff just for the sake of development and enjoyment.
Yeah, especially when it comes to longevity and building a well-rounded body as well, because the downside of specializing is that you just become really good in one movement pattern and using your muscles in that particular motion, i.e. someone that does straight arm strength specialization with absolutely zero bent arm exercises, nothing for the rotator cuff, zero isolation work. Although that specificity is king and you will get really, really strong, you can almost get so strong and have so many potential bottlenecks holding you back, as well as not having structural symmetry and strength in areas like the rotator cuff, that eventually, despite having strength, you might get these overuse injuries, pain, which can actually slow you down long term.
Yes, I think especially if you come just from a traditional strength training background in the gym, bodybuilding, that's at least how I came about, and then transition through CrossFit, got exposed to a few gymnastics movements, really humbled me in my transition. You develop certain weaknesses, because the type of strength I had was somewhat relevant. It helped me, handstand push-up is similar to overhead press, and I was quite strong at that, but I had profound weaknesses. So that's where you really have to start working on your weaknesses. For me, it was a lot of that rotator cuff that you were referring to, a ton of mobility, a ton of handstands. I was doing mostly that at this stage. The AM sessions, the handstand and mobility AM sessions. PM was strength training. That was fun. I saved it for later. That was a luxury. So transitioning into gymnastics, you start doing all of the different rotator cuff and general stuff that you were referring to. I think if you develop into gymnastics as a young kid, you won't develop these advantages, the weaknesses, as profoundly as someone who transitioned from traditional bodybuilding gym, and your body will morph into the gymnastics body.
Yeah. And when we say gymnastics, we're referring to gymnastics strength training. We're not talking about performing on the floor, doing acrobatics, that type of stuff. That's a different domain. We're more interested in the gymnastics strength, bodyweight strength, and the rings style of training. And when you do calisthenics, it highlights if you have insufficient mobility, flexibility, it makes movements so much harder. For example, a handstand. I don't know what your handstand mobility is like, Raphael, but for me, I've always struggled with that full open shoulder position. And consequently, when you don't have all of your joints stacked above each other, it becomes a lot more of a muscular effort to hold a handstand. So yeah, me naively, when I first start doing calisthenics, it's just strength, maybe a little bit of stretching at the end of a workout or a couple times a week on a rest day. But you got to do those AM sessions, like you said, dedicated mobility practice, if you really want to change your body's range of motion.
Yeah, I think if you take gymnastics strength and mobility, as you said, dive deep, do all of it. I see how you want to do mostly the strength part because I think it expresses itself externally more. I can't see if you're mobile, right? But we can see if someone is jacked, obviously. And that's for good reasons. We respect it because it hints of the type of feats of strength that the person is probably able to do, right? But dive deep. Take the handstands, take the mobility, take everything. When I coach, I really want people to learn the handstands, even if they come very focused on just a push and pull goals. I want them to do the handstand because I know that it changed my perspective. It's a mental practice a lot. There aren't a lot of stuff physically limiting you from doing it. So now it's mostly about position. It's a lot about patience, determination, consistency. It's a practice that brings up other stuff and that I think that you will miss if you are just focused on the strength. So dive deep, take everything, all of it.
And training handstands, as an example, it brings meaning to your mobility, because otherwise you just go, I want to stretch my shoulders, or my lats, and here's a little bit tight, so I'm just going to do some hanging just to improve range of motion. It's not the same as I am stretching. I'm spending hours per week because I want to improve my handstand. It sounds like the same thing on the surface, but when someone has an objective as to why they're doing what they're doing, you know how much more effort you put in? It's something that's really missing, because I speak to a lot of people and they don't really know what they want out of their training. And that is a red flag straight away to me. I could almost say for certain they're not going to make really good progress or stick with it long enough to make progress. But the person that's going, I've got these 4 or 5 different stretches to improve my handstand, I know they're going to make gains.
Yes, once you attach it into a function, which will be your end goal, that you will judge the improvements by, you can derive so much motivation and determination from that. So if it's for press to handstand, straight arm press to handstand, that requires a lot of hips mobility mainly, a lot of pancake mobility, you constantly get feedback from the press to handstand practice about how your mobility training is going. And if you're just doing mobility for the sake of mobility, which there is a place for it, but once the practice will need to get serious, you will ditch it. So if it's a nice 15-minute daily mobility routine, all good. But once function is on the line, you need something to push you extra. Mobility training, people that you've been actually following, looking and inspiring to get to that level of mobility. You see yogis, you see gymnasts, they took their mobility training very seriously at a certain stage, just like strength training. You have exercises, you have goals, and you do it consistently.
I think there's a misconception when we consume content and we see the end result of someone that's big, strong, as well as mobile. Just because you don't see them posting their stretching routine and stuff, I can almost guarantee they're doing a lot of extra homework that doesn't make the social media feed. Because who's going to want to watch someone doing a hold of a stretch? It's not the most interesting thing, but it permits you the range of motion to do handstands, back bridges, press to handstand, having full mobility in your shoulders to do deep dips. But we just see the end result.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Fitness FAQs. Become a bodyweight beast with our calisthenics workouts. Use the coupon code podcast20 at checkout to save 20% off when shopping at fitnessfaqs.com. Don't miss this discount. Start training smarter and enjoy the gains. We've spoken a fair bit about calisthenics and weights. I think it's safe to say that we're both a huge fan of the combination of both. What do you get from mixing these methods that you don't get from just one or the other?
Yes, I believe weights allow you to isolate certain weak points better. The reality is, if you look at a gymnast and you will look at yourself, your arms are not jacked enough. Shoulders are probably not well-rounded enough, including the rotator cuff, the teres minor, and upper back. That's where you see a lot of development in a gymnast physique. They don't have a big, bulky torso, huge lats, huge chest, huge traps, necessary for other strength fields. You will have much easier time objectively, measurably targeting certain weaknesses using, let's say, dumbbells, and track your progress over time. Okay? As well as just doing lower body. I find that to get the raw stimulus, that the intensity that the lower body craves for either extremely high power output, like weightlifting or just squatting, it helps a lot, that combination. If you have access to a gym, you can definitely use it for lower body, you can use it for isolation. Okay, you can do your gymnastics practice, right? We talked about specificity, it certainly is important. Start practicing your skills, practice the handstand, practice the handstand push-up, the pull-ups, everything that you are focusing on. If you have certain gaps, you can then address them, so-called hypertrophy or accessory work, at the end of the workout using dumbbells, barbells, even machines.
What about the argument of adding muscle mass to non-functional areas that aren't used in the exercise you want is pointless?
Well, if the only objective is developing muscle mass in the areas that are necessary for a few skills, that might be correct. Sincerely, it might be correct. But if you have, for instance, discrepancy between limbs where the left arm is lagging in elbow flexor strength, elbow, that stretched position, similar to how you tackle the elbow flexors in a preacher curl, right? When in the stretched position, dumbbells, preacher curls, are extremely useful. I've been using them for a decade to specifically address that weakness. So you can use dumbbells to tackle the disadvantages that you have in calisthenics. It's still very specific to the practice, but it's hypertrophy work, it's accessories. You are able to isolate between limbs to really target the weakness, because imagine you're doing, let's say, an iron cross. It's a highly technical, coordinated movement that incorporates basically all of the upper body muscle group. How can you, whether you have a disadvantage or weakness or not, you can't really isolate it within that pattern. So if you want to bring up your weaknesses, you can do that. And by the way, you can also develop your strength. So don't just focus on weaknesses. Keep pushing your strength up, what you're strong at, and also you can, address your weaknesses. But I think Ed Cohn said it, target your weaknesses and compete with your strength. So you can isolate and develop both using dumbbells. And by the way, there are great isolation calisthenics exercises as well. I've been doing, because I'm traveling, a lot of isolation ring training. Tricep extension, ring curls, pelican curls, face pull, etc. So I think the conversation is not really dumbbells, barbells versus calisthenics. It's more isolation versus compound, and I think that a lot of people have trouble just with the idea of doing isolation, especially when they're moving their body, which is should be the entire opposite of what is calisthenics is supposed to be.
Fantastic. The distinction of a bigger muscle has the potential to be a stronger muscle. Once I learned that, just the basics of it, how you can teach your body how to use your muscles, being the hardware, and then your nervous system is the software, get those combined, then your performance will improve. And with building muscle, it's a very non-discriminatory general adaptation, whether it's body weight, barbell, cable, machine, free weights. If you have a high effort relative to failure with sufficient number of sets per week on the muscle, you will grow. You combine that with sufficient nutrients, you're going to adapt, you're going to get better. What is fantastic is having so many options now, because you are training with calisthenics and weights. You've got options for compound as well as isolation. This approach, I see it as being the ultimate in sustainability and longevity, because you can rotate through a season of just calisthenics where you're doing compounds and isolations or body weight. Then you can mix in some weights for the isolations only and go hard on your calisthenics. It is just endless with the number of options that you can do.
Exactly. And gymnasts, it's a lot about hypertrophy, but you want to maximize the strength per pound of muscle mass that you gain. So you always have to keep the efficiency very, very high as you build muscle. And the ratio of and the type of muscle group that you will hypertrophy is different than a powerlifter, right? But you will hypertrophy the arms and the shoulder and the upper back a lot, and some other muscle groups. That's a part of the adaptation that you're looking for. Okay, there's a distinct difference between how a gymnast look, a ring gymnast and an all-around gymnast, and then just you, okay, or a powerlifter or anything to that matter. And if you can close that gap by addressing specific hypertrophy training and muscle group, you will simply progress faster.
Because strength is mainly a skill and it's highly neurological and there's a lot of technique involved. If you are just training for pure strength, you're eventually going to tap out. You look at the world of powerlifting where they're in a certain weight class, and one of the best metrics of performance is their muscle mass. So if you have person A who weighs, say, 80 kilos and person B who also weighs 80 kilos, but person B has a bigger percentage of muscle mass, less fat, you could almost guess that the person with more muscle mass will be stronger most of the time.
Yeah, basically maximizing your lean body mass to your weight class. I think a lot of people are afraid to pack on mass in gymnastics because you have to manipulate your body in space, but that's the whole purpose of muscles. I don't think that people really understand what the muscle is about. It's exactly for this function to move you. And in gymnastics, you need a certain type of physique, right? As we said, it takes certain muscle groups to hypertrophy the most. And yes, for the most part, I agree that leg size for pure gymnastics is not as functional, we can call it. from a very gymnastic specific point of view. But it is about building muscles to fill out your frame according to a gymnastics physique. You need to fill out your frame. It's not building useless muscle mass. It's not getting fat. It's just your ultimate form, we can call it, will look different, resembling a gymnastics physique. That's where you want to go.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because in calisthenics, we're trying to be as lean as we can to maximize that relative strength. But this year-round calorie restriction, it comes with problems, i.e. you're not at a surplus, you can't build muscle. Because I noticed that you have spoken about this before, about it's a trap that many people fall into, just not eating enough, and it affects their training.
Yes, anyone who cut to any meaningful degree, and that's slightly individual because we have different body fat percentage set points, knows that your mood deteriorates, hormone functions deteriorates, energy in the gym. Everything has to be so specific in your lifestyle to accommodate a bullshit diet that you don't really want to sustain to any meaningful degree, but you want to get to a low body fat percentage. Now, that's not where you actually operate optimally at. There's a slightly higher body fat percentage that is still lean and athletic, that is optimal in terms of more aspects. Relative strength included, so how you perform moving your body weight in space, right? Gymnastics. But also hormone, lifestyle, you have so much more flexibility, energy in the gym, you sleep better, everything is so much better, and you get to eat more, you have more energy, and potentially provide the energy that you need and the proteins, the building blocks to build muscle mass. You can call it lean bulk, but you do have a certain physique right now, and you need to build muscle, if you're already lean, in order to get stronger in gymnastics. Now, you can either support it by providing enough proteins and calories, or you can disregard this physics, really, and be in an indefinite calorie restriction. Now, I'm not promoting gaining fat, but you can always cut. Relatively short-term adaptation. You can cut for 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks. That's short-term adaptation in the long run. Building muscle and strength and supporting that as an athlete, that takes years. So don't cut yourself short constantly with calorie restrictions, and the moment that you gain 1 pound of fat, you go on a shortcut. You gain 1 pound of fat, you feel good. But, the midsection is not as tight. You do a cut again. You're constantly in this cycle. People who do this probably are the same people who are stuck in their level of strength. Devote yourself fully for a year, let's say, to a very lean bulk where you just provide energy to the body. And I think the key benchmark is track relative strength. It still needs to go up. So if you're lean bulking, you're providing the body with enough energy, and weight on the scale is objectively going up weeks and months, your relative strength still needs to increase. Pull-up numbers, deep numbers, front lever numbers, planche numbers, they can go up. And when weight on the scale goes up, but also relative strength goes up, use these two benchmarks, you know that you're on a quality lean bulk where the ratio of lean muscle tissue that you're packing to fat mass is very effective.
Really well said. And I can relate to this situation because I've spent extended periods of time being around 10%, maybe even a little bit lower body fat percentage. And despite feeling really good when you're training on body weight dips, body weight pull-ups, certain leverage-based exercises, when it comes to adding heavy load to pull-ups, dips, doing deadlifts or squats, that's where it highlights when, if you're at a leaner, lower body fat percentage, it is really difficult. All those things, I can relate to that in terms of not looking forward to workouts, mood being lower, plateauing, numbers not trending upwards. So then about 1.5, 2 years ago. I'm like, okay, let's do a lean bulk. Let's try and embody what you just said there. And it was like a light switch was just flicked. I gained, so went from, was it like around 82 kilos to maybe 84 and a half, 85 kilos, and felt significantly better. Desire for training was up. The numbers on all those lifts were going up as well. And what I want people to take away from this is it's not an all or nothing thing. It's not as if I feel like trash at this 82 kilos, I'm going to go up to 90 kilos. Instead, it was only 1.5, 2 kilos over the span of essentially a year to a year and a half. And then you're able to perform better, you're getting increased muscle mass, you do increase some body fat as part of the process of being on a surplus. But what I want people to take away from this is it's not extremes, right? I haven't gone all the way down to 5% body fat and tried to stay there, or bulked up to 20% body fat. I'm putting into practice these principles and using my own body as the metric, looking at my performance, reflecting on mood, sleep, all that stuff.
Yes, and so much more mental space is now allowed to being invested in strength training, which is, if that's what you're after, most of your time should be revolved around that. And if you're constantly thinking about getting lean, calorie restriction, maintenance, calorie this and that, and maintaining 8%, that's what you're focusing on. And maybe that's your goal, but if it's not your goal and you actually want to get strong, well, more of your time should be devoted to thinking and applying strength training and not constantly thinking about restriction, calorie restriction, and just how you look.
Yeah, exactly. And using visuals as a reference, it's not as if you have to completely lose your six pack. It's not as if it's just going to be gone there. You just look like you don't even lift. You're just really chubby when you take your shirt off. And then conversely, it's not as if you have to be veins coming out of absolutely everywhere. You still got some visible separation in your muscles, but you also have that performance. And I think this is the distinction between being in season versus off season, because in sports, they have a distinct in season and off season. If we're just training calisthenics or also lifting weights and whatnot, we're doing this for life. We're doing this all year round. We've got our deloads. We've got maybe a week off here or there over holidays, but we're training non-stop. And you need to program in these phases for yourself, be it a slight calorie surplus if you need to, build some muscle, focus on that performance, and there'll be a time for a calorie deficit, maintenance. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail really, because if you're doing it recreationally, for the most part, you are not waiving your training to any meaningful degree. So if you are a professional, you have a yearly cycle and even an Olympic cycle, if you're a good athlete. and years will look different. Okay, coming up to the Olympics, you will train differently, or World Championships, or anything. So the off season, after a big competition, it's rebuild time. Training will look different and nutrition will look different to accommodate that. So if building more muscle mass and strength is now what you need to do after a competition, nutrition will support it by more calories, slightly more freedom on that end, growing more, knowing that you will maybe lose a little bit of speed or top end strength, but you peak closer to the competition. We need to waive our training more, even as recreational trainees. And it's fine if you don't do it for a 4-year Olympic state. It's totally fine, but even just take your month and try to waive your month, or mesocycle, some call it. Basically, weeks will look slightly different. Some medium intensity, higher intensity, and change volume or intensity accordingly. So you can bounce off of recovery weeks, you can peak your strength, and so on. Everything feeds off of each other, and it's not just constantly gradually, linearly increasing intensity indefinitely, which is not really in practice what professionals do.
That sounds perfect in theory, Raphael, but in practice, do you have any tips for actually doing so? Because we're all creatures of habit. We have a preferred style of training, how we structure a workout. Some of us might prefer higher volumes, like myself, a lot of different exercises. How do you change to a different style of training and not have that sense of, oh, I'm missing out on what I prefer, or it's because it's uncomfortable to do something different?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard today to stay accountable to a program because you see so many different recommendations, information online, programs, free on YouTube, Instagram. It's very hard to stay accountable. I found 20 years ago, if you read Super Squats, and that was the only book you had available, you do the Super Squat program for a year and you were all in on chugging a gallon of milk a day and 20 reps squatting. And now we just, our mind is dazzled by a new program and a new way of training. But it will be easier for you if you just apply it shorter time. It's fine again if you don't apply it yearly cycle. Me neither. It's completely fine for the most part. You won't need to ever. Have 1 month where you do higher volume, you can call it hypertrophy block. The next month will be higher intensity. If you just ping pong off of these two slightly different stimuluses, and for the most part applying the same exercises, you will benefit so much instead of just doing the same rep and set scheme, trying to increase intensity or weight slowly, gradually, week in, week out, month to month. Higher volume, slightly moderate intensity, and then a higher intensity, and you can lower the number of exercises. You can specify on less number of exercises, or so-called your competition lifts, increase the intensity, reduce the volume slightly, recovery will come, you will feel the recovery as you peak, and you finish this very short 2-month small cycle, and you will feel like an athlete. And you will say, wow, you will be convinced. But there's a small buy-in period. You have to do it. Once you do it for a few weeks, you really will be convinced.
I like that, because in my mindset, I have the belief, this is what just comes to mind, is if I want to go from high volume, lots of exercises to a strength-focused program, I got to stick to it for 3-4 months to get the optimal progress out of that. But after hearing you, another expert coach, that makes a lot of sense. I can commit to this for like 4 to 8 weeks, see how it goes. And after that initial buy-in, you're right on the money there. You'll feel the performance gains that you're going for, or the adaptation in that domain that you've committed to, and you'll probably do it for a few months. Whereas I think the problem we get into is we don't stick to anything long enough. It's a key theme from today.
Yeah, we can all take away. Even you see high-level athletes, I know myself included, being accountable more for the stuff that we need to do will definitely is still the most important part to getting to our goals. And there, for the most part, there is no fancy magic trick. We know what we need to do already. It's 2025. Come on, we have too much information. We need to take action more, is the stuff that is limiting us from reaching our goals for the most part.
Yeah, it's that action, and it's also committing to the hard thing when the hard thing feels hard. What I mean by that is it is difficult when you have a simple basic exercise. Let's talk about the barbell overhead press. This movement is so basic. It's vertical press. You do it standing. It's technical, but there's not a lot to really think about, and it's damn heavy. Like, you just push the bar over your head, use a full ROM, lift heavier. You can stick to under 6 reps if you really want to build that strength. Simple. Sounds great. Okay. What happens after 6 weeks? You get to that session and you're dreading it because you knew how hard the last workout was. How much easier is it to be like, I'll change the exercise. which we all fall into that trap, but it's sticking that stuff out for long enough, which separates the average from the exceptional.
Yeah, and especially the barbell overhead press, it's just a brutal full body lift, really. And I think it's just setting expectation. There is a lot of value to derive from stuff that are difficult. Usually, there are also useless, difficult stuff. But it is difficult for a reason, and it usually means that you can draw a lot of value from it, so your expectations should be accordingly. And I just thought about it on this travel, actually, not related to training, that I don't really want to not work remotely, coaching and training. That's just, I come to the realization, I don't really want a lifestyle that doesn't have that to a certain extent, and also invest time with my family. That's the stuff that I enjoy and want to do. Even with facing the difficulties of it, I wouldn't want to just chill for a month. That's not who I am.
I know. It's the people that I speak to, any friends I have, people I meet at the gym, people I talk to online who have trained consistently for more than 5 years, very similar in the mindset. It becomes about, it's more than the PRs at this point. It's about the process. It's about doing something difficult in your life because everything else can be so easy. You can go watch TV for 4 hours, not do anything. You can eat junk food. You can watch pornography if you wanted to get ultimate dopamine. Like, there's just so many different things you can do. Whereas the training, you can influence that. You're the only one holding yourself accountable. And there's something really powerful about that aspect of training.
Yeah.
You spoke about something which I know many of us find difficult, because it's not as if we talk about training in isolation. We've got training, we've got the self-improvement, we all want to become better. We've got our career as well as our family. For those of us that are really driven, we want to improve, it is really difficult juggling progress in every single thing. How do you mentally keep yourself sane when your training's going really well, but you're dedicating so much time to that you're not spending enough time with your family? Or if you spend too much time with your family, you're not hitting as many training sessions as you'd like?
That's a tough question. For me, probably one of the hardest periods in my life was transitioning into becoming a father. When Sophia came around, my training suffered a lot, for good reasons, right? It's all good. But I don't think that you can really prepare for that. There's no preparing for a kid. It's all in. There's nothing really simulates that. It's 24/7. That's why you see a lot of dead content, dead fitness, dead calisthenics. Because if you're a father or a mother, you know what it takes. It's basically having 2 jobs or whatever you want to call it. It's now you're doing the training when you're adding in so much more stress, lack of sleep, and other priorities, that it really shows your determination, provided you follow through. I think a few tips, if I can tell that to my younger self or for any upcoming parent, would be to keep the momentum going. It just change training. It's fine. Adapt to, instead of 4 days a week, do 3 days a week. Okay. You can do shorter workouts at home instead of going to the gym, which will probably take you twice as much, getting the same exact session. Change your training. Your life is not right now about just, being at the top physical shape as humanly as possible, right? Indulge in the process of becoming a father, and that's a life quest. It's here to stay. And training can modify, but don't fool yourself. You can make a ton of progress, and you can get whatever you want, but training will modify. Don't stop. It will be hard, but you can always modify training to accommodate whatever situation you have. Plus, there's just also a transition phase where you do adapt to sleeping less, sleeping poorer, waking up middle of the night, which for me it's still the case. We still sleep with Sophia in bed, and we love it. That's what we chose for us. She's 2.5 years old now. We just love having her around. And actually, there's a transition phase. You do adapt to somewhat sleeping less. It's a mental switch. And once you mentally switch, just wake up after a 4.5 hour of disrupted sleep and just do the workout. You'll be so happy, so fulfilled, satisfied with yourself that you got the task done. I want to see that once you do the workout, tell me if you regret the workout. Wake up early, do the workout, you'll feel great afterwards, and you won't regret it. Okay? Now, keep the momentum going. You can always change training, but don't cut yourself some slack, because I can easily see how it amplifies, this snowball effect to where, you lose track of nutrition, you lose track of training, and everything just grows because the stress is there. And I want calisthenics, which is relatively a young field, but strength training and everything training related, take it for whatever stage you're at. It's not just a young man's experience. No, just enjoy it. It's a life quest. Do it with the obstacles. It's not supposed to be where you only train when you have the perfect scenarios, because it only gets harder as you go. At least that's the experience I have so far. You mature, you have more responsibilities and burden on your shoulders. So part of it is the setbacks. That's what you have to overcome, including becoming and being a parent.
I love that message, because it is so common to see people enter parenthood, and understandably, fitness is the first thing to go because you're so busy with raising the newborn, being a partner to your partner, training on top of that. Unless you really, really want to dedicate yourself to it, it can be the thing to go. But then the nutrition goes, and then it's this spiral where it would not make you as good in the aspects of life that you need to show up and be strong. I really enjoy what you said about it's the mindset shift. It almost appears to me the equivalent of if you get injured, you're not your previous self. You're not as strong as you were. Your performance will be lower. But it's the mental, I guess, just beating yourself up if you're not able to perform to your peak or be what you used to be, because the environment's different now. If you're injured, you need to look at the situation honestly and just do the best you can. If you're a new parent, you've got kids, same thing. Your time is going to be constricted. But once again, it's not an all or nothing thing. I have kids, I don't work out. I have no kids, all the time to work out. It's this gray zone in between where I really get motivated by people in your position who have all those responsibilities. They still show up and do it. It's auto-regulation. You're not going to have the perfect workout or a great workout most of the time, but you go in and you honestly give the effort that you should, and you be consistent. But it's not mentally beating yourself up over it because you're in a different situation. You're forced to train in a different way.
It's a sign of maturity, that you are just able to modify training and do the best with whatever you have, and not getting attached to, I was supposed to hit this exact weight. You will, don't worry. In 8 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 months, you will, don't worry. Now it's the time to stay in the game, to keep momentum. And that's why I love, by the way, ring training. I can take them anywhere. That's what I do. I've been doing that for a few months because me and my family have been traveling. I just hang them and I'm able to do my workout for the most part just as prescribed anytime, anywhere. I just need a tree branch. So that's one of the big advantages of ring training. And I want to say two things. First, I'm doing this for myself, mostly self-motivated. And, that's not the case for most people. Most people do need the community, the accountability, the support. For instance, as a business, I have people helping me with marketing and stuff like that, not because I can't, because I realize that I want. That's it. And that's fine. And maybe I will one day take this chunk of work, but that's fine. I need support and accountability in other fields to grow. And you have to choose what are your priorities in life, okay? You really prioritize your health? Show me your calendar. Where's the workout? All right? Your calendar, your schedule should reflect your priorities, and you will feel aligned with yourself when your schedule will reflect your values. And if you need support, really, if you need accountability, that's the stage where, hey, get a coach. That's fine. You keep doing your career. That's why, by the way, you are working. So you can invest in stuff that you prioritize, okay? You don't take the money to your grave. So if you need to invest in a coach, that's definitely one of the times where you will face one of the biggest obstacle or challenge if you're talking about parenthood. Not everyone is this self-motivated figure, and even if you were, you might need support now. Funny story, so I'm here traveling. I'm in this cafe. I just arrived at a new location. I'm in Thailand, and everyone is a youngster. And I'm supposed to I came here to drink espresso pre-workout, but I have zero energy in me, zero. I've been packing, taking the luggage, arriving at a new Airbnb. Where do you find the motivation to go and find the tree? I don't know where.
Feels, bro.
But
Feels.
I was there. I was there in the cafe shop, and everyone was a youngster, and I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, I see you. Okay, I will show you what old man strength is. Enjoy the moment. I will enjoy the difficulty. I will face it. So I energized myself I created a scenario where I motivated myself to overcome the difficulty. But again, for the most part, you want to rely on community, that's fine, and friends and coach to have the support and the accountability. You want a system that works, not just everything is motivation based.
What helps me for those scenarios where you've got low energy, low motivation, because it happens, because I know people might see yourself or me, they must always be motivated. Look at them. They love training. Surely they wake up every single day and want to crush their workout. Doesn't always happen. The mindset shift that I employ on those days is not thinking this has to be the perfect workout. I don't have to give 100%. I don't have to progress to a really high extent or even progress at all. It becomes slow and steady progress over the long term. Show up in the day, show up in the week, the month, and then if you zoom out, you've made progress. That misconception that you have to crush every single workout makes when you have that feeling seem even more daunting. You're not going to want to do it.
Yeah, it's a part of the problem of linear training. And definitely just you have to, that's fine as long as it goes, it's fine. But you have to have off periods or slow periods or recovery periods to build off of, so you can intensify and peak. It's not just constantly smashing yourself against the wall. A lot of workouts are coming in, doing the work, leaving the quick sessions, and that's perfectly fine. You stay in the game. There will be time to peak and max out and do all of that. Stay in the game, show up, most of the time you'll see that you're completely fine. It was just you were fatigued, and that's totally fine. As you warm up, you'll feel good, you'll feel better in most cases, and you'll be able to do the workout and enjoy it and feel great after.
I'll also add, don't get greedy, because when I do feel like I'm going to set some type of PR, it is very tempting to try and do your absolute maximum in terms of magnitude of progress. These days, as I've become more advanced and more mature, I know I'm doing so many workouts a week. If I go absolutely all out in that one workout where I'm feeling good, I might make a couple of PRs on a few different exercises. But if I do it to a really high extent, the fatigue cost, I pay for it eventually. It's going to be in the next workouts, or it's not going to allow me to kind of consistently make more linear progress over the weeks. Have you experienced that?
Yes. This phenomena occurs on a weekly scale, on a monthly scale, on a multi-month scale, where not all of your sessions really need to be all out. If you look at strength training, it is a lot about sub-maximal lifting, or you always keep a few reps in reserve, okay? You're still training heavy. Let's say you're training with your 5-rep max, but you're only doing 1, 2, or 3 reps per set. So you always have a few reps in the tank, and you save a lot of fatigue by not going all out, which is different from hypertrophy, by the way. A lot of times in hypertrophy, you are looking to maximize the fatigue per set, so you get better stimulus. But then you can't probably tap into the same workout tomorrow with the intensity and the CNS that you would have had saving a few reps in reserve. So that's one of the key differences, strength training versus hypertrophy. With strength training, you want to practice movements more frequently. Therefore, you slightly increase the intensity per session or proximity to failure, so you can train higher frequency. Hypertrophy training, you see more split training, bro split training, so you have more time to recover between tough sessions of the same muscle group because you smash the same muscle group every time. But if you look at strength athletes, some of the sessions are completely chill. It will look like completely chill, not what a lot of people would expect strength training to look like. You do a set, a short rest, a short set, not to failure, a few reps in reserve, you rest a few minutes, you do multiple sets, you move on to the next workout, and you're done. And that's how a lot of professionals train, sub-maximal lifting, and the same concept applies into a bigger time frame where, as we say, if you train 1 month, you can have this style of training, and the next month you will peak, you will increase the intensity, maybe training will be harder in general, higher in effort. So the same applies, but every singular session doesn't have to be the hardest, because it actually on the long term, as you said, it takes away from the accumulation of work.
I'm glad you mentioned that about strength training compared to hypertrophy training with the general proximity to failure, because it's really easy to forget that, especially if you're combining methods. You're doing hybrid training where you're doing calisthenics and weights, but you're also starting with strength movements and finishing with hypertrophy. It can be easy to forget that your strength movements, for the most part, should have reps in reserve, and your hypertrophy stuff, your more isolation-based exercises, should be taken close to failure. Because it can happen both ways, right? You can be doing your strength movements to failure, but then leaving reps in reserve on the hypertrophy exercises. That is the ultimate suboptimal way of going about doing things.
Yes. If you haven't experienced a high-frequency program, well, usually, so you have the volume and intensity and frequency, and I would generally say that those three can't be high simultaneously. Something needs to drop. In that case, the intensity drop. So you keep a few reps in reserve, okay? Let's say you take your 10-rep max, okay? Imagine an exercise that you can do 10 repetitions of on a great day. Let's say it's ring chin-up, full range of motion. You only do about 3 to 5 reps per set, okay, so about a third to a half, but you can train every day. You train the movement 5 times a week, okay? Maybe one session will be harder, but the rest, you basically tap into the exercise, tap into the movement and the frequency, and you leave. You leave the workout on a great note. You are not fatigued, you feel fresh. Actually, you want to do more, but you leave the workout there. And you come again tomorrow and you work the same movements. Easy strength program, if you want to test it, that's just one case, but I don't have any affiliation to the program. It's a 5 days a week where you choose 5 movements. And yeah, you basically do single, double, triples, very submaximal, and you will be astonished by the progress you'll make by week 3. Okay, and there was the Norwegian study over weightlifters that tested 6 days a week frequency for the same movements and how much better results they got compared to, I believe it was twice a week for the same movement training. And this study was mostly, they kept the study secret for multiple years and decades until it was no longer a secret. Most weightlifters train the same way. But, you know, in the 60s and the 50s, for the most part, people still used to train only 3 to 4 days a week, even competitive weightlifters. It was, you trained one day on, one day off. Even the American greats. And then Ivan Abajev, the Bulgarian former national weightlifting coach, most of you probably have heard about the Bulgarian method of training. He was the exact opposite. Let's train it every day, multiple times a day, even 4 sessions a day. But that's the only thing that you used to do. You would sleep and you would train and you repeat that and you repeat that. And he started coaching the national Bulgarian weightlifting team, I believe, in 1968, for about 20 years or so, with great success. And now high frequency training is more common, so it's not reserved to inside of gymnasiums, which is for the most part how gymnasts train as well. Gymnasts train 5 to 6 days a week. And the way that they are able to train with high frequency is they manage their effort. They have some hard sessions a week, but not all. Most of them is tapping into the movement, working, some accessories, working a few physical traits, but not high intensity. It's practice, it's technique work, and maybe you have 1 or 2 very hard ring sessions a week. If you look at the elite ring gymnast, that's how they train. They have, for the most part, 2 hard ring sessions, but they come into the gym 6 days a week and they train maybe up to 6 hours a day, but it's not high intensity, all out, all up, 2 failure ring training 6 days a week.
Frequency and intensity, inverse relationship. One's high, the other's got to be low, if you're looking at it from an extreme perspective. So I don't want people to leave this conversation and go, okay, 6 days a week, and then take everything to failure, do tons of volume. If you are going to go this high frequency approach, you've really got to have restraint and do it truly submaximal. If you do, the grease the groove type of approach that's common in calisthenics is just almost like a cheat code if you practice on a handstand, a front lever. I've had great success with myself and students doing that grease the groove approach when they have the high frequency, but they're not going too high volume.
Grease the groove works great. It works great with certain movements in calisthenics. I find the ones that are not really demand a lot of warming up towards, and it doesn't work well with exercise that you really need to prepare for in terms of mobility and tendon conditioning, like an iron cross. That don't grease the groove with an iron cross if you're hearing this podcast. But handstands are perfect. Pull-ups are great. As you said, front lever, usually just low stress movements, that you can repeat a lot of time, but the intensity is relatively lower. You always keep reps in reserve, and the frequency really shows its benefit. If you haven't experienced it, you will get a great boost of strength. By the way, partially due to the fact that for a change, you will probably be recovered. If you're a very hard-working athlete that have been smashing your body 5 to 6 days a week, and you are just accustomed to the fatigue and going all out, that's your style of training, for a change you'll be recovered, and you will be shocked by what people were referring to when they told you about recovery and how important it is. And it's very interesting, and I think that if you're an all-out type of guy, the only other route that you can take to make progress without sacrificing, injuring yourself and sacrificing progress would be some sort of a bro split, actually, for calisthenics. Because if you only have the all-out mentality, so at least better have 7 days to recover before you train the same movement or muscle group. So if it's like back, shoulder, chest, legs, that's your split. It's basically a bro split, maybe an arm day. You can go all out, trust me, with a ton of volume if that's your style of training, but you have to reduce the frequency, as you said, Daniel. And that's the way to go around if you don't really want to change your training style.
All right, boys, bro split, that's what I'm following. You've just described the perfect structure for me. I actually have never done a bro split. I should run an experiment as a off-season block and see how I go, because it does suit my temperament. And for those that are listening that do like those all-out sessions, yeah, I could see the merit in that. But the only downside is you're not getting that frequency, which for skill-based strength is probably not the best. I want to talk about splits a little bit more specifically, because one of the most popular splits is the push-pull legs split, whereas in calisthenics, gymnastics, strength, the straight arm, bent arm split is something that can give great success. Why is that?
Both splits are great. You are looking at twice a week. Probably if you want a push-pull leg, you'll probably do push-pull twice a week. Maybe you'll do push-pull leg, rest, push-pull rest. And straight arm, bent arm, same. Straight arm, bent arm, legs if you want rest, straight arm, bent arm, rest. That's actually the main split that I follow when I transition from gym, CrossFit into gymnastic strength and calisthenics. I did that for the most part for a few years, and it helped me a lot, because twice a week frequency per movement, so you'll train your planche twice a week, you'll train your handstand push-up twice a week, or front levers and pull-ups. That's usually the sweet spot. In terms of recovery, you'll still get 72 to 96 hours between muscle groups of the same kind or the same movement, but also enough tap-ins into the movement. So you have enough frequency. Twice a week is the sweet spot. You see a big difference in terms of strength gains going from once a week per movement to twice a week. But from twice a week onwards, the increasing strength is highly diminished, if anything, for strength adaptation. So it's interesting. Twice a week is usually the sweet spot. Straight arm, bent arm, by the way, is a harder split to manage, because you do have overlap in terms of muscle group. On the straight arm workout, you'll be doing front lever, for instance, and then on the bent arm, you'll be doing one arm pull-ups. So you're still training your back, right? That's 4 days a week now. It's viable, it's good, but as you progress, maybe a push-pull split where you really have less overlap between muscle group will suit a slightly more advanced stage. You don't have as much overlap between muscle groups. You have 3 to 4 days to recover for, the biceps, the back, the chest, and usually it's something that helps promote progress if you're more advanced.
My experience, the exact same. When I first found out about Ido Portal, bent arm, straight arm split, everyone's doing it because you're trying to get those skills on the straight arm day, but you're also building up that foundational strength with the bent arm day. eventually that 4 times per week of hitting your upper body muscles, it becomes really difficult to program it and actually recover, because as we know from this podcast, I like to train hard, and that type of approach doesn't leave much recovery if you're pushing most of the sets really hard. That's why over time I've settled on twice per week frequency for pulling, pushing with the push-pull legs type of split. And I can, support that sentiment that you've shared there about more intermediate advanced people will benefit from the twice per week. It's actually enough frequency. Once per week, arguable, not enough. Like in terms of repetitions of the movement, 3, 4 plus, maybe too much long term.
Yes, I think first and foremost, a lot of credit to Ido, the work that he did, bringing gymnastics into mainstream, we can say. So tons of credit for Ido. I think that I've coached enough people at this stage, and Ido's student as well, to know that they come with a certain profile, and usually inflammation in the elbow is a trait that is very common to this style of training, where you will be rewarded quickly because you are doing a ton of work in a single training week. You train every muscle group 4 days a week. You might get a good strength and muscle sort of quick gains, but you sacrifice your recovery. And once you start implementing movements like the planche, the straddle planche, the front lever, everything that Ido was after and we are after in gymnastics training, the stress, the tendons, you feel it. But again, it comes back to the topic we had prior. Your whole personality is revolved around working hard and working a lot. So your ego is attached to training a certain way and doing a ton of work, even though you are inflamed and you know it and it hurts and it doesn't feel sustainable. At 20 years old, let alone 40 and 50, what will happen pursuing that route? Imagine the type of pain that it will bring. So moving on from a straight arm, bent arm into a push-pull is a wide choice, or upper-lower if you also want to devote a lot of time to athletic training or lower body strength, where you have more rest for the upper body. And another derivative of the push-pull is the 1.5 times training split, which is basically you have 2 push sessions a week, you have 2 pull sessions a week, but they are also different. One push will be overhand, the second push will be horizontal. For instance, barbell overhead press, and the second push day will be bench press, or for us it will be handstand push-up and weighted dips. And that's a very common powerlifting program, because you see in every strength sport, you see it comparing different sports to one another, but also within the sport, the more stressful the singular movement is, the more you want to really allow the stress recovery adaptation by bringing more space, air, and recovery between sessions of the same kind. So you basically only bench once a week. You only overhead press once a week, but they do have overlapping muscle group. They still train similar muscle groups. You train some delts in both. You train some chest, maybe more upper chest, maybe more lower chest in both. But it also, it's basically 7 days to recover between you train the same movements. And the same with the squat and deadlift, right? Both train the lower back, but you don't really deadlift twice a week. That's very hard. You don't squat twice a week. Similar in calisthenics, when you get stronger, the push and pull, you make them slightly different. I call it the 1.5 times a week. Planche, and the second one can be a planche variation or just a bent arm push focus day, like a handstand push-up.
I like that, because difficulty that I have when doing twice push workouts per week is if I'm doing, say, an overhead press and a dip, it is really difficult to program that in a twice per week frequency. Firstly, choosing which one is the primary lift and which one is the accessory, but also just recovering enough to progress on both movements twice per week for a whole training block.
Yeah.
maybe a 1.5 would suit a stronger person like me in that respect.
Yes, I definitely agree. Especially, Daniel, I saw that you do a lot of weighted calisthenics and you do move a lot of weight. So I think it fits that style of training even more because the movements are simpler. And by simple, I mean you really are able to move more weight. The less technical difficulties, the less imbalance you have, the more stability you have, the more the load is and the stress allowed to be, and the greater the stress, the more recovery time you have to have. And basically, I think at your stage, and I see that we see a lot of influencers going that route where, hey, you really only need to dip heavy once a week and pull heavy once a week. And a lot of people see great success with that. So you can do handstand push-up, another, or skill training, push skill training on another push workout, but bringing more air and space between weighted dip hard sessions. That's great. Now, if you look at street lifters programming, they will still do weighted dips on the second push day, for instance, or upper day. They will still do the dip, but it will be a technique day, a practice day, a light day, variation day.
Pause dips.
Exactly, it's pause dips. Why paused? Because you have to decrease the load by 10, 20%. And that is slightly less stressful than the competition lift with slightly less range of motion and the stretch reflex. You use less weight, it's easier to recover from. Or you can use the same competition dip style, weighted, but you just reduce the load. However you want to really go about it, you have to change the stimulus, either by changing the variation or the load to now accommodate recovery.
As far as following a training program before having a deload, how many weeks would you program a training phase? And what would a deload look like as a general recommendation for most people?
So how long will training be before you have to deload is the question? I would say for most people, I like deloading every 6 to 7 weeks. If you haven't deloaded yet, again, you'll be surprised by how good you feel after, okay? And now in order to negate some of the rebounding effect that you will have from not training, deload is not training. You still need to have some intensity practicing your main movements. Otherwise, you'll have to rebound the week after. You'll feel worse after a deadlift. A lot of people have experienced that. So if you completely switch style of training, you don't really have any intensity, and you drop your main movements, or you don't train altogether, you'll have a harder time coming back into training. You'll have to train 1 week or two to just be where you were prior to the deload.
Getting the technique, the skill of the different lifts, you miss that if you don't practice the form.
Yeah, it's short term. Obviously, whatever is lost quickly will be gained quickly, okay? But it's just not the best way to deload. So if you haven't deloaded yet, as a strength athlete, I think you'll benefit from it a ton. Every 6th or 7th week, you can also deload every 6th to 7th session of the same kind. That's another approach. So it will be shorter deload, but more frequent deload. And that's great for anyone who really doesn't love a long deload. If you don't want to take 1 week off, deload the push session, every 6th pushing session. So it's only half a week. And depending on the style of athlete that we are dealing with, you will deload accordingly. Okay? And some people, if you're a volume freak, you will need to pull back on the volume. If you're an intensity freak, you'll need to pull back on the intensity. So you want to deload the physical trait that you are mostly loading on the proper training weeks. And another way of, if you're an intensity freak, all-out athlete, and you can't accept a deload, another way is just change the exercise. So, for instance, if you're doing weighted dips, just do ring dips for that session. And again, you'll have to use significantly less load. You can still go all out like you love training, but it will be less stressful because it's slightly different. But it still trains similar muscle groups for the most part, and you won't get detrained as much.
Beautiful. Raphael, I could talk calisthenics and training with you all day, mate, but we'll have to save this for a future chat. Where can people find out more about your work?
Raphael.paz on Instagram and thebodyweighttribe.com for one-on-one online coaching. That's what we do. That's all.
Perfect. Till next time.